It is a common occurrence, one that I believe people almost treat as being normal. Moral degeneracy is one of the issues that has plagued our society, and many individuals simply accept it and even encourage it. Not too long ago, I was shopping at a grocery store, and this is where actually this whole topic kind of occurred to me. One was the apparel on a lot of people, a lot of the shoppers. 10 or 15 years ago, people used to wear, normal clothing, right? Not, anything formal, but just, regular pants, right? Shoes and, a shirt, right? Long sleeve. You would never see somebody wearing pajamas, right? In a store, right? In a public space. But when I went that time, at least a good quarter, 25% or so, that was wearing, sleeping clothes, right? I didn't see anybody in slippers, but they were wearing not formal clothing, right? Or not sorry for the lack of any better words, but not clothing that I would expect people to be wearing in public, right? I also walked across a few people that were wearing extremely shabby clothing. How do you even almost say it? Kind of looked like they were homeless, and they smelled like it too. Absolutely rotten. So bad, I immediately, when I got home, I had to take a shower because their smell just carried to basically everybody that walked by them. That's how bad it was. It was a very, very uncomfortable experience, and I only could think about just how degenerative our society has become. That something that I would say would be unthinkable 10 or 15 years ago, right, has now become so normal that even a good percentage of the store had people like this. So to kind of start this topic off, I wanted to ask you, how more broadly does moral degeneracy affect America and by extension the Western world? What are the ramifications of allowing it and even sometimes encouraging moral degeneracy in people?
Well, so are you trying to say that we are degenerate, our culture? Then actually there is something wrong when the guy comes, to the store wearing pajamas, grabs the sandwich from the shelf and start eating it before even paying for it?
Well, of course, that is very degenerate.
Okay, I can agree with that, I guess.
Well, because it's without principle, right?
Yeah, it is. Well, I agree with that. I can say from my perspective of being living in the United States for the past 29 years, almost 30 years. And let's be honest, it really did start in big time. The inception is in 90s. That's around the time I came to the United States. Thank you, President Clinton and all the other douchebags who took the charge of the country. But anyhow, so at the beginning, when these things kind of started, popping out in younger generation, especially, all right, like do whatever you want to, enjoy the life, everything is awesome. We want a Cold War. Yeah, we want a Cold War. We are the awesome ones, and so on. Just nothing is bad. So it was kind of that sentiment, like, well, I don't be judgmental. Don't be judgmental. You are too stringent. Come on, you are young, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was when about that 15-20% was kind of into this kind of lifestyle big time, kind of people who kind of woke up in the morning, just threw the dirty clothes around, go whatever school, work, came back, threw another dirty, dirty clothes around, and they order some pizza, throw the boxes around the house, empty boxes, just like living like a pigs, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
right.
Hey, how can you say anything to judge? And they kind of spread out, to the other parts of our society in different ways, to the point that almost the half of the people, right, were kind of living that way. And there was like, now the people actually saw it. even the people who kind of said before don't judge, but they were like, well, what can we do? What can we do? It's too late, right? Like, how
Right.
could we stop it? They are adults, blah, blah, blah. And so they kind of stuck their heads in the sand. And it got then even further to the point today, then it's like, yeah, it's degenerate behavior, but let's make it part of our country, part of the proper behavior. It's proper behavior, actually. Now, let's call it that way, right? So that's how it kind of got, from the something negative to the something which, well, let's don't see it even, let's don't look at it to the point like, well, it's actually a good thing. It's actually good for our country.
Right.
Yeah, even though it's completely ridiculous, right?
Of course it
It's
is.
completely
Yeah.
ridiculous. Yeah. It's almost like our Secretary of the Treasury, the present Secretary of Treasury, who is even older than Joe Biden, which is kind of funny, said, a few years back, well, inflation is good for our country. It is good when we have a higher national debt. It's going to be awesome. Well, really?
Right.
So you can see, like the people go from denial to I don't see anything to the
To
point like,
ignorance.
well,
Yeah.
I have to see it. I see it now, but let's call it a good thing now because I
Yeah.
cannot deny it anymore. So let's label it a different way. Let's label it as an awesome thing, as a good thing, and yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
yeah.
I know I already gave that shopping example, but another example that was fairly recent. We have a tram network or light rail system here where I live, and I remember I used to use it all the time, but ever since I was able to use my car to park to go to school, I haven't been using it, and I used it recently, not too long ago, and I remember one of the writers on it. Mamma mia, this man genuinely just made me question, like, where are we as a society? He wasn't much older than me by the looks of him. It was kind of maybe 1 or 2 years of a difference, but pants was at his ankles, right? Like the top of his pants was at his ankles. I could clearly see his underwear. Like, Mamma mia, really? And he had like this horrible posture, right? Like almost like a hunchback, right? And like he was kind of like not walking normal. Like it was almost like there's like a jaunt a little to his step. And he was not even like he was speaking to himself, right? I'm assuming rapping. But it was completely incomprehensible. At least I would understand, like, if it was like he was singing lyrics to some music. No. He was just speaking complete pig Latin, right? Pig English to himself, just making a bunch of random gibberish sounds that didn't even correlate to English. And he was doing that while even on the train as well. And then he also, of course, had a vape pen, right? E-cigarette. He was just puffing every 10 seconds. And he did this on the train as well, on the actual tram. I tried to stay as far away from him as I could, but he annoyingly got into the same wagon, into the same car as me. So I was like, well, that sucks. I tried getting to like the one end of the tram, but he he kind of paced himself on the platform, and then at the last minute, kind of just jumped on before the doors closed, and it would just happen to be my car as well. So yeah, and again, when I saw this guy, I was just like, really? Like, this isn't even normal. This is just weird. But the thing is that's also was kind of normal, because when I got off the platform, there were like at least a good other like 10 or 15 people that were just like him, on the waiting for to get on the train. It's well, I guess
if you cannot fight them, let's join them then.
Yeah. So they've
That's what
made
it is
they've
right
made it
now.
normal, right? And so
Yeah,
as you kind of mentioned, it maybe started in the youth back in the 90s, but it has eventually kind of spread out, not just to the other generations, right? Gen Z, Gen Alpha is way too young still, but especially Gen Z, right? And of course, obviously millennials. But it's even gone up, right? Even was it Gen X, right? Which is, before millennial, even they are now like, well, hey, if we can't correct them and we are also experiencing, hardship, well, let's just join them, right? Let's also engage in this. This is clearly the better way of life, right? So,
it shows weakness of the culture.
mm-hmm.
If the culture is that weak that it cannot fight degeneracy, and instead choosing to join this counterculture, then it shows the weakness of the culture itself.
Mm-hmm.
So in pretty much the entire, like, yeah, let's be happy, everything is awesome, let's, give each other a hug and sing kumbaya. It's weak. It's weak in itself. It cannot sustain itself because it will always join something which is stronger than it is, and what is the end? Well, the end is all the complete bottom of the decadence,
Right.
which is destruction of the country itself. Just like Roman Empire, for example, it's always one of the best examples. Roman Empire fell apart because of the decadency, because the culture just fell apart. It was weak, became so weak that it just couldn't resist anymore to anything. So if that's what we want to be, well, we are walking in the right direction.
Right. Yeah. We will ask another question here, but to kind of wrap this question up, you brought up Rome. That's a perfect example for our Western world right now. I mean, we have one of the strongest economies. We have one of the largest militaries, right? We have all this technological progress, right? You'd think, man, this is going to be hard to break, right? How could this type of society fall? But then you look at something like Rome, and they were kind of in the same position too, compared to the rest of the world. They were technologically, militarily, economically, basically, they were way ahead in just almost about every aspect of society and of humanity back then.
Mm-hmm.
And yet they crumbled, and not even that long. It didn't take that long. They crumbled fairly quickly. I was like, well, why is that? They weren't like attacked, really. It wasn't. Oh, they had a couple of, recessions or depressions economically, right? Obviously, I don't know how that would correlate back then, but they didn't have any like economic hardship and struggle, right? It wasn't, well, the technology outpaced the society at the time. No, it wasn't any of that. The issue, as you just mentioned, was the degeneracy, right? They started accepting things that completely broke what used to be, these societal principles and doctrines that people followed. They just let themselves loose, and with that,
it takes only one generation when you really think about it. Only one generation. Yeah, always one generation away from being overrun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
you can have one strong generation like we had, right? The 30s and 40s, the greatest generation. The people who survived the Depression times, they survived the World War II,
right.
The Korean War, the beginning of the Cold War. They survived that. Very strong generation. However, we as a people, we are not only responsible for our very own lives, but we are also responsible for our children. Mm-hmm. Parenting is probably the most important part of our lives, which we have, creating the next generation. And
right.
If people, for whatever reason, either being too lenient because they had too hard lives in the first place, so let's make it easier for the next generation, or because just psychologically too cowardly to say, actually, hey, this is wrong. Or maybe because of their moral stance is not really founded on solid principles, anything. And a generation will cave in and they will create the next generation, or they will allow the next generation to grow into the opposite what their parents were, and then it just go down.
Yeah.
And it's very, very hard to stop it. Once you get on that slippery slope, that downhill trend, it's very, very hard to stop it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's super, super hard, to turn the other way.
Right.
So
let's segue over to, I guess, the next question, right? What are the ways of combating moral degeneracy in our own lives, right? If we ignore how we can help others, right? You mentioned parenting. Let's first focus obviously on ourselves, right? If we can't help others avoid moral degeneracy if we are also being degenerate as well. So how, if somebody is degenerative or they've exhibit decadence, right? How what are some, in general, good ways of trying to combat that, to try to actually get out of that decadence and degeneracy?
all the first two which you mentioned that are pretty much across any spectrum of our lives, right? Being being responsible for yourself and responsible for your kids, your family, right?
Right.
That can do anybody, anyone. Every single one of us can do that and should do that, and have to do that if we want to stop degeneracy. And then after that, it's according to our each own stations in our life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to tell everybody should go to the politics and try to prevent it. Same as I'm not going to tell, everybody's got to go, become the leaders of the church and try, to preach to the people, or the leaders in communities, or everybody got to start the business, and enforce the certain rules, with their employees. I mean, this is impossible, right? So everybody according to their station of life,
Mm-hmm.
You as a, self-employed, going to have different opportunities to do, to have the good effect, on the country, the morally, and it's going to be different than from my influence, which maybe as, I don't know, let's say as a employee of the government, right? And something different is going to be for, I don't know, somebody who is a pastor in a church, right? So everybody according to their stations in life, their employment, their opportunities, their talents, but with that, something which we have all of us together, the same, which is, hey, at the first you are responsible for your very own life, which is not because you improve your life, but it also give the example to the other people. People at least who wants to see. Some people, if not majority, will be completely, oblivious whatever you do. But there's going to be, of course, certain amount of the people who are actually going to see that you're trying to do the right thing, and they will try to kind of, do the same thing in their lives.
Right.
Just kind of give them the courage. You can kind of show them that, well, hey, maybe it's possible. I see that guy here, the neighbor, the friend, my brother, and so on, my sister, they trying to do the right thing. Well, hey, how about that? Right. I'll do the same thing too. Am I going to
lead by example, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, the kids, they're looking always up to the parents, no matter what people they say, that, well, you as a parent don't have that much time with the kids and so on. Well, yes, maybe you don't have as much time as the peers in the school. Maybe you don't have as much time as, I don't know, as the teachers in the school or in the colleges and so on. But nevertheless, it's not measured. The influence is not measured by the amount of the time or even by the material positions and so on. Influence is measured actually how deep impact you can have on the kids. And you as a parent, I mean, nobody has, yeah, look at how many parents, affected negatively their kids, even by doing nothing, I don't know, drunkard father, how that affect, the kids, right? It's very deep. Kids are always looking towards their parents. And it's many times many times it's completely unintentional. And they get affected by them just because there's that connection as a parent between the parent and the kid. So yes, we have 100% the duty actually to raise our kids. And if the kid doesn't go right away, from the beginning, well, okay, well, just keep going and just keep, working. I mean, some kids need a bit more time.
Right.
It could be maybe some issue with the kid, just because it could be also the parent doesn't know the proper way, or just the environment they are living. But you just don't give up.
Yeah,
right?
don't
You
give
just
up.
don't give up.
But also,
Yeah, and don't compromise you as a parent. You cannot compromise the right things you believe in. And most parents, they know what is the right thing. They're just afraid to say it, afraid to show it. And many times, even the parents are not at the same, the spouses, right, are on the same level. One spouse says this and the other spouse says, well, it's too hard, you should not. Well, that is going to be the teamwork, right? They have to work together.
right.
But even if they don't, you as, the one parent, even the other parent doesn't want to go, in the right direction. It doesn't matter. You still have the duty. One time, one day, all of us going to be judged by God. We're going to be standing in front of a God. And we can have some excuses like, well, I did my best, but hey, my wife, she didn't want to go along, she was against everything. Well, yeah, all right, I understand that, but what did you do?
Right.
Did you quit on yourself? If you quit, well, then there is no excuse then. She didn't quit, right? So why did you quit then? If you know that this is the right thing to do. If teaching the kids, having the job, finish the school, taking care of their own lives and their own families, being productive in the society, having the faith in God, living according to the Ten Commandments. All these things are so important. You believe in that, but you quit on it. Well, who you want to blame for it, right? That would be kind of my answer. So, hey, use the opportunity. I would tell all the parents, especially the parents, use all the opportunity you have. Because, don't wait until, well, I'm going to wait until the kid is 10 years old, 12 years old, until he's a teenager, then they're going to be understanding more than now. They are too young, too small. No, that's too late.
Do it as
You
early
start
as
right
you
from the
can.
beginning. Yeah, exactly, because then it's going to be too late.
Yeah, because it's a slip. I was going to say earlier, it's a slippery slope too, right? Because I understand you mentioned that people have a limited time and maybe money and materials to work with, but the thing is that the longer you wait, the idea of, I can maybe do a better job at parenting when they're 10 or 15 or 20 and they'll understand me, that's, if you start there, that's too late. I've met a lot of kids my age, and they almost have a complete disrespect for their parents, and they don't even want to listen to anything they say. If you wait too long, your kid might end up like that, and that's kind of almost like a point of no return. You have to really kind of entice them. I mean, it's not impossible, of course, to change them still, but it's extremely difficult, even more difficult. So do it early, right? That's not.
Well, look at the parents, in the past. Right? We should always learn from history, because that's always the best lessons we're gonna get in our lives is the history. We should know the histories, because history is always truthful, as long as we study it properly, not just read this somewhere on internet.
Right.
Because it always shows, the fruits of the labor. It always does. So look at the history, right? I mean, we didn't have, so many troubles as we have today. Yeah, there were certain nations like the Roman Empire, but it was not like the continuous thing. I mean, yeah, Roman Empire fell apart, and then the Christianity started spreading out right after that, and we're doing pretty well for almost 2 millennia, pretty well. So what gives? I mean, the parents in the past, even not a long time ago, like even like you go back like 100 years ago, they had less education, those parents, right? Much less education than we have today.
Harder quality of life.
Yeah, the quality of life was much lower. I mean, that was, especially 20s and 30s, right? And 40s, World War II up. People, they struggle with the money that time.
Mm-hmm.
And the lives were shorter. Lives were much, much shorter, but it means that the kids left the house much earlier than they live today. Kids were leaving, when they were 15, 16 years old, leaving the house.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Just because they couldn't be sustained by the parents. But even though the kids grew up much better, they were much productive as the citizens. So what is it? Some people might going to say, well, yeah, but that time the society was much cleaner and there were less temptations to do wrong things. And I would say, no, negative. I mean, we talked about it a few times before. All the sinful things which you have today, which is, the lust and the anger and gluttony and the sloth
they've always been
and
there.
the pride, greed. It was always part of our lives. Those temptations always exist. It doesn't just change because, it's the 21st century, so it's a little bit harder. Well, absolutely not. That's just the excuse. No, we are just weaker, not just because it's harder. We are just weaker.
Right.
And what we need to do, we gotta stop blaming, oh, it's not my fault, oh, it's the other people, and it's the society, and it's the school, and it's the politicians, and it's this and that. How many times have you heard that, right? Every single day.
Right, yeah. It's not
Just
me, it's
amazing.
somebody else, right?
It's nauseating. Like, you hear it all the time, and these people just don't realize, like, you're just lying yourself, and then you try to lie to me too as well. Just wake up. The world we live in is the world we make.
Mm-hmm.
Or the world we make is the world we live in. Whatever, society we live in is the world we make. We get a lot of freedoms. We have more freedoms as a citizen of the United States than any other humans had in history before. Mm-hmm. Nobody had so much freedom in the entire history of the human civilization as we have today. And we wasting that freedom on just completely useless, idiotic, and pretty much selfish things. So yes, we can fix our culture, our society, but we got to start first with ourselves. We cannot help other get cleaned up if we are still dirty, right? So start with ourselves, clean our very own lives. Then we got to start focus, number 2, on those we are responsible for. And we are responsible for always for our kids or our children, for our families. To a certain degree, eventually later on for our parents when they get old.
Mm-hmm.
So that's number
really
2,
big
families. Yeah. Yes, exactly. And then once we got that one, then again, according to our own stations in life, help the society.
And more
that's
importantly,
it.
Stop, to elaborate on that last one, stop living just for yourself, right?
That's the first step. That's the first step. The selfishness, right?
Yeah.
Is the first step. I know it's easy, you as a parent, I could say that too. Well, okay, I come from the work, I'm tired, and I got kids at home, and I should be, spending time with them and teaching them the right thing and giving them example. But it's okay, I'm just gonna grab, some fast food, and just gonna sit in front of a computer and just gonna gorge myself and play video game for 3 hours. That's the easy way. The hard way is like, no, I'm tired, I'm hungry, I'm all these things, right? But yes, I'm gonna grab the kids and I'm gonna spend as much time as I can with the kids, teaching them the right things. And I'm gonna do day after day after day. until they are ready to live their lives on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to be teaching them what's the right thing to do, and I'm going to giving example to them as well, what is right, because they need to see that it actually works. That's a good start right there.
It is.
Don't have to be politicians for that.
No, you don't. That's much easier to fix than to fix all the politics and whatnot. And this actually has much
and as I
more
said before,
fruits.
As I said before, it takes only one generation.
Right.
As it takes one generation to destroy the society, it also takes one generation to heal society. So let's get started.
Mm-hmm. And that's a good note to end on too. We are a bit over time, so we'll have to call it for this week. In the next episode, we'll be talking about the myths of understanding the origins of the world and of the universe. If you have any questions, feel free to send them to us as we may answer them in a future episode. We'd appreciate it if you could follow us on all social media. And until next week, thanks for listening. Take care and God bless.
Godspeed.